New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today for another wonderful conversation with a soul-centered individual that is channeling their time, their talent, their energy, their resources into doing good work in the world and making a difference. So I'm so happy that you're here, that you're watching, whether you're live with us today or you're watching this as a replay. I'm really glad that you gave yourself the gift of tuning in. So today we are doing something a little different than our normal programming, which is to have a interview or a get to know someone in their life. Today we are having a guest come back. My very good friend Michelle Medrano is here with me to have another talk about the Enneagram. And so here's Michelle on with me. For those listening and not watching live, we're both here on screen. And if you want to watch us, you can pop on over to YouTube to New Thought Media Network and watch us live or watch the replay. Anyway, hi, Michelle.
Hi, how are you doing today, Allie?
I am doing well. I've been up since the crack of dawn, went for a walk, listening to a podcast on the Enneagram, preparing for our talk today.
Great.
And I'm ready. How about you?
Good. I'm good. Also been up since the crack of dawn, preparing and getting ready for the day. Happy to be here with you again for our Enneagram chat.
Woohoo! Yeah. So we thought we're both of us, and if you listened in last month, you would have heard us introduce ourselves in terms of being Enneagram teachers. We just recently went through a beautiful year-long training with Michelle's mother, who's an Enneagram teacher, coach, mentor, that's been working with the Enneagram for well over 30 years. And she's now teaching people what she's learned and what she finds so valuable about the Enneagram, primarily through the lens of the narrative tradition, which you and I both are a part of now. And so here we are today. We are going to be basically talking about one of the wonderful parts of the Enneagram teaching, the Enneagram wisdom, which isn't specific to the Enneagram. It's a very universal concept or theory or notion that we are three-centered beings, that we have intelligence, not only in our brain, in our thinking, but we have intelligence in our heart, our emotional intelligence, and we also have our gut knowing, our body intelligence. And so we're going to explore these three centers of intelligence, mostly using the language of the Enneagram, but also because Michelle and I are both New Thought leaders, ministers, and teachers of the science of mind. We draw heavily upon metaphysics and our spiritual journey and understanding these different aspects of who we really are that are included in our essential nature, our soulful self, that we are head, that we are heart, and that we are body, mind, and soul. So Did I say that right, Michelle?
You sure did. Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
have anything to add to that about who we are as teachers that sort of intersect or bring in science of mind or metaphysical teachings, principles with this language of the Enneagram?
Well, I think that the whole notion of this inner triangle has to also do with the law of three. And you see in many traditions, the three, the Trinity showing up, that there seems to be something in the human um, intelligence and instinct that understands the law of three. And we tend to put things in threes. I know when I do talks, I usually have 3 points and things like that. So it's seems to be very normal for us to do this. And I think the Enneagram, understanding this law of three, helps us to understand ourselves. And the same is true for our metaphysical tradition. Understanding the three elements that we teach about helps us to understand ourselves spiritually and how life manifests, which is a huge part of what people are trying to explain when using some sort of trinity or some sort of a chart of three elements and that sort of thing. So the Enneagram just falls right in line, and you can see it in the chart very easily if you take a look at it carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
and the symbol of the Enneagram is, it basically came to this country by the way of George Gurdjieff back
Yes.
in the early 1900s. And he was from Greek Armenian descent. And he was the first one that brought this symbol. An
Mhm.
Enneagram stands for Ennea 9
Fine.
and gram written symbol. And so he brought this symbol, which is a circle with a 9-pointed sort of star configuration in the middle. And
Mhm.
Michelle's talking about this triangle, this golden triangle in the middle that sort of represents the foundation,
Mhm.
the whole person,
Mhm.
and the personality structure. Um, there's so many directions that we could go in with this, but just to get back to the symbol, when this early arrival or this arrival of this early form of Enneagram wisdom came, it came with as that symbol, and associated with that symbol were these three intelligence centers: the head, the heart, and the gut, or the body. And the 9 types that came along afterwards, because this gentleman didn't have those 9 personality types associated with the symbol. And I kind of find that so intriguing and interesting and delightful, that this isn't a body of work that one person came up with.
Mhm.
It's something that he's evolved over time. And I think coming to this continent, and then developing with the people that have come in to work with it, that now today in 2024 it's presented in a probably an unrecognizable way than George
Mhm.
Gurdjieff
Yeah.
thought that it would be. So have you done much thinking about the 3 centers as it relates to um, the types, how it's developed, or like you mentioned, the symbol within science of mind, or the law of three that sort of weaves its way through a lot of spiritual teachings? Have you what are your thoughts or feelings or knowing about the symbol? How did it land for you, knowing that you've been on this path for a long time? How did it first, and maybe it's just now integrating into your awareness?
Well, I am still evolving my awareness of it. How I first came to understand it and how it still continues to work me is that, of course, that symbol, the only place, if you look at the symbol, that you see an actual completed triangle are the points that connect the 9, the 3, and the 6. And they represent different points in the different centers, 3 different centers that kind of guide the whole thing. And then you can see how all the other numbers also tend to have a relationship with numbers across from them in other centers. And I think that how it, and being a 3 myself and watching my energy with my 6 and my 9 that I might have a relationship to, I can relate to those in terms of those centers, the actual centers. My 3 being in a heart center, right? And my 6 being in the head center, and the 9 being in the body center. And so when I understood what those 3 centers meant, it helped me kind of gain some balance. And then my evolution was to be able to see other numbers and to recognize that I think that the great thing about the Enneagram, and sometimes the challenging thing, is that it is rather complicated. It's not that just I lead with a 3 and that's the end of the story and now I know myself, bada bing, bada boom, we're done. It's not like that at all. We have other relationships. And then these 3 centers really help me feel when I'm in that place, when I'm really in my head and I'm really in that thinking it through, anxiety and heady stuff, and what if this and what if that, then I can feel myself navigating to that 6 part of myself. And when I'm in my 9, more dealing with some of the other anger or rage or bodily, like my body, the more I developed and I'm aware of that 9, the more my body is connected, and I can feel things in my body, like maybe a person who's leading numbers in the body type. And so it's like we all have this really developed, strongly developed area where the 2, 3, and 4 in the heart center, and the 5, 6, and 7 in the I see. I sometimes I switch them around. The head center, and the 7, 8, 9 in the body center. That we all have potential development there, and I think the law of 3 helps us be more grounded. Just like in our spiritual practices and our spiritual teaching, we have the mind and the spirit, soul, body, and the mind being capital mind, the mind of God, and then the soul or the law, the creative force, and the body that people reflect as the seed, the soil, and the seed, the soil, and the plant. It all helps us to understand ourselves and bloom more powerfully with that understanding and that evolution. So I feel like that's been important for me in all of those realms.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for those that have maybe not heard of the Enneagram, or would like to know a little bit more about what these 3 centers are that we're talking about, why don't
Yeah,
we explain those a little bit?
good
And
idea.
yeah, so there are 9 types in the Enneagram typology, or personality profiling system. And those types are divided into groups of 3. And so there's 3 types that inhabit the body center. Those are the 8, the 9, and the 1. There's 3 types that inhabit the heart center. Those are the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. And then there's 3 types that inhabit the head center, the thinking center. And that's the 5, 6, and 7. So these 5, 6, and 7s are dominated by, and their worlds are shaped primarily through their ability to analyze and imagine and reason and rationalize. And so many people that's how they process the world, and they lean primarily on that center of intelligence. And most human beings rely very heavily on the head center, on our thinking. It's the thing that is, promoted most in our world, from when we're born to going to school, and all that we learn is basically through, especially here in the West, through our mind, developing the mind, and less is emphasized on how we're feeling or our gut instincts or
Right.
intuition. And so the feeling center, the heart center, the 2, 3, and 4, those types, people that lead with those types, they are the type that experience the world through their feelings, through their emotions, through their connections with other people.
Mhm.
And so they're more interested in that. that's not to say that a heart-centered person doesn't have access to the other two, but usually we have two of these centers that we predominantly lean upon and one not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so to finish up the explanation of the three centers, the body types, this is the doing center, and they are more interested in the outside world and having some kind of sovereignty or control over what's happening in the world. And so they're more attuned to how they're feeling and what they feel inspired to do to sort of, well, and another thing that each of these centers has an emotional component to it.
Right.
And so maybe you want to talk about that a little bit, the emotion that sort of just under the surface there for each of these.
Yeah, for the head-centered folks, it's all about the fear and anxiety and the management of the fear and anxiety. And often that's what they're using their head for, is to think away their fear and anxiety, to justify, to use their minds to bring logic, even though they're always battling their below the surface, not always, but often battling fear and anxiety and trying to figure out how to get rid of it in the head type. And the heart types are always dealing a lot with I think it's like, isn't it guilt one of our primary ones in the heart center?
Shame
and guilt. And that's all about, I know for me, it's all about the connections I have with people. And like yesterday, I spoke yesterday at my center, and I was at the end of the day, and I was talking to some ladies, and I got very lightheaded all of a sudden. And I had this kind of panic come over me. And I said to them, I'm sorry, I need to go sit down. And because I'm a heart type, I need to go sit down and I need some water. And so I went and I sat down and I got some water. Well, I've been dealing with guilt all day long because I didn't say a proper goodbye to them, that I didn't feel like that transition was as smooth as I would like. So my heart is going out to them, and I'm going to have to call them and apologize because I'm all concerned about it. And I have to kind of keep going. It's okay, Michelle. It's about the connections that I have, and I can easily feel guilt or shame. And then and so I said the head type and the body type. The body type is often their emotion that's just below the surface is often their anger or their rage, or it's like, it feels like it's a kinetic desire to move something forward for a couple of them, especially. And at the same time, I've really been fascinated because I would say for me, the body type, my body energy, that is the least, has been in the past somewhat the least aware in my awareness, that I've heard body types say, even when they feel their anger, or they see injustice, or they see something going on, they'll literally feel sick to their stomach, or they'll have some pang in their body that will cause them to be afraid that they're having a heart attack or something's going on, because that fear and anxiety is felt and processed literally through their body temple. And so they don't always know what it's about or how to express it, but it is always there. And so that's my articulation of some of those. Does that make sense? What would you add to that, Allie?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Well, I think that I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about our development of each of these centers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how, because it's nice to read, you know, a little blurb about these, and it makes a lot of sense when we consider that, yeah, there's this thinking part of me, there's this feeling part of me, and then there's this doing part of me. But let's maybe go a little deeper into, because I know that there's a healthy version.
Yes.
And then there's kind of the medium or everyday version of, you know, how we can be. And then there's the unhealthy. And so let's maybe talk a little bit about the head center, and you and I have both studied the science of mind for a long
Mhm.
time. So
Mhm.
we understand that there's sort of a surface aspect to the mind. And
Mhm.
then I think what this Enneagram journey, if we want to use it as a guide for a spiritual journey or to go deeper, do some personal development, we can see that there's more than just the surface mind.
Right.
There's understanding how to manage our thinking, which science of mind does beautifully, helps us to understand that. And then there's also the deeper mind. I
Mhm.
like to think of it as there's our local mind, and then there's the non-local mind, or the divine mind, or the realm of infinite possibilities and potentialities. So the mind isn't just what we're thinking now. There's some exploration that we
Mhm.
can do to activate this head center. Because if we are, let's say, like you and I, we're both in the heart center triad, we may be more concerned with our connections with people, with our, like you said yesterday, you went into a moment of distress and then you felt shame and guilt afterwards. But we can call upon the wisdom of the mind and the wisdom of the body, the instincts, so intuition, to sort of help us move through or process some of these feelings. And
Mhm.
so there's the local mind, the non-local mind. So to develop this center, I think it's important to understand, do some journaling, maybe ask yourself what do I think about? What am I thinking about these days? Um, and sort of expand this exploration to, are these thoughts that I'm thinking helping me or not? Are
Mhm.
they moving me in the direction I want to go in, or moving me into a place of, not feeling so good? And then expanding it even out further, what would God say, or what would the universe say? What's a broader way of thinking about this particular topic, or this fear, or this emotion? Because I think when we get in an unhealthy place with our thinking, we can feel very tight and closed and fixated on a particular thought or fear or concern. But then when we do this kind of depth work and examine our thoughts a bit, and then even ask or pray or do some meditation on the greater mind. So what's your thought about developing the mind and moving through from sort of a place of more fear, because that's the underlying emotion behind those head types, moving from fear to faith?
Well, I think you have described it very well. There's one part that I would put in the middle that I think is so elusive to people who are practicing our brand of spirituality, and even who are working with the Enneagram. And that is that we think we know what we think. But when we describe the mind, and you're talking about the thoughts I'm having, there's that deeper mind that's below the surface. That, if you think about it, just imagine that the mind is like this vast video recorder that has recorded everything we've ever said, done, thought, experienced, decided. And the brain, in our current evolutionary state, does not have the capacity to store, like a computer, to store everything so that we can access it at any time. So the brain and its efficiency has created, of course, we know about mind science, the deeper mind that has the long-term memories and the short-term memories. And then we are using most of the time in our conscious awareness, I've heard it estimated maybe 85 or 15% of our brain's capacity. So the thing that eludes us all the time with all of this when it comes to learning about ourselves is we actually sometimes arrogantly think, well, I know what I think about that. I know what I think about that, because we just think, I don't have any negative thoughts about money. I have no negative thoughts about money. But we've completely forgotten, naturally, because the brain has supported us, of some major thing that was going on when we were maybe 7, 8, 9 years old that was very stressful about money. And if we are a head type, we won't want to remember that. So we'll think, all I have to do is affirm a good thought. I am happy and abundant, and I always attract money. But all the while, that memory is running the show because it's below the surface. And so in our teaching, we have to understand that thought, the word mind, the word thought, is inclusive of even these deeper places, the 85 to 90% of our thinking. And sometimes when we can't it's not that everything that we approach is in that deeper mind, but sometimes the more sticky ones are, the challenging ones have some leg or some energy in trauma or unexpressed emotion or fear or anxiety that we experienced when we, many years ago, that is anchored in and is still influencing our thoughts, and we don't even see it consciously. We think all we have to do is just think a happy thought and this will go away. And honestly, many times that's true. It's like a garden. I see it like a garden. And sometimes you can pull that weed out and it's like, oh yeah, I'm changing my idea. I don't want that anymore. And you can use an affirmation or a one-time prayer and bam, something changes. But the ones that are challenging are usually lodged in the deeper surface of our consciousness. And how that shows up in the Enneagram, I think, is somewhat similar in that we have, because of where we lead with, we have habitual awareness of ourselves in that one realm, and not as much awareness in the other realms. And so if we're forgetting our body, for example, we're thinking nice thoughts and maybe we're working on our emotions in therapy, but we're not paying attention to our body at all, what will happen is that the body, the physical body, literally will call our attention to it at some point, and that might look like disease or illness or pain or challenge in the body, which we get angry about, but is often the body saying, hello, I'm here too, we need to be balanced. Or conversely, maybe we're really into our head and we're keeping ourselves really excited and energized and thinking happy thoughts and working out and eating our greens and taking our good foods in and eating our smoothies and all that stuff, but we're not dealing with our emotional body. We're not dealing with our heart. And then suddenly we have some emotional upset or breakdown, and it's totally foreign to us because we haven't balanced ourselves. So I think in both of these realms, the wise person learns to understand there's more to this than initially meets the eye. And I've got to be willing to do that deeper work to understand myself, to know myself, and to change anything about myself or my life that I want to change. That it's the going deeper that's really important.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I was thinking, I heard, I think it was maybe Bruce Lipton or Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the body being the subconscious mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
That's
I know
beautiful,
this
isn't it?
isn't like Enneagram talk, but I'm like wondering where it intersects here, because I think when we're doing work on our mind, when we're doing some deeper exploration and seeing there's the surface thoughts, there's the who I think I am and what I think, and yes, there's those things that I've kind of buried or suppressed or repressed that then maybe do affect our physical health or what have you. And so these systems aren't isolated. It's not the head center, the heart center, the body center. We have all three of these. And I think by doing work on all of the centers, going into the surface mind, exploring the deeper mind, connecting or doing meditation and prayer to open up to the greater, non-local divine mind, sort of influences and affects, clears maybe some of these sort of narrow, fixed ways of thinking and believing that keep us, cycling back in a very kind of unproductive way. We can learn to use our minds, whatever type we are, in a more efficient, effective, meaningful way to affect all three centers and bring it all online. Because I think that's the goal, is to get all three centers online so we can, not just be making decisions from the head, we
Right.
include the emotions and the
Yes.
feelings and the depth of being and how we want to move through the world.
Mhm.
So yeah, I love what you're saying, and it's really helping me to kind of integrate all that I've learned throughout the decades about the mental sciences, about science of mind, with
Mhm.
this, because I've learned, even though I'm a heart type, I've learned so much on the mind and developing the mind, and maybe avoiding some of my, feelings. So maybe we talk a little bit about the heart center now.
Mhm. Sure. Sure. Yeah.
So
The heart center, go ahead. Do you want to
no,
say
you
something?
go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
The heart center, I think in its highest form, people who are in the heart center have what we hear about in the world like emotional intelligence. They're able to be very emotionally intelligent and comfortable with their own and others' emotions and make connections from a heart space with other people. And when it's challenging, it's kind of the opposite, maybe have strong emotions, huge emotion that they don't know how to manage or they don't know how to express or they don't know how to, that can overrun them at times and can make them seem to other people to be very dramatic or over the top kind of thing. I have a friend who's a heart type, and I remember we were in a group and she's very prone to tears of joy and tears of sadness, easily cries. And other people who I'm going to guess were probably more head types or body types used to pull me to the side and say, why does she always have to cry? Every time we have a group session, she cries. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a heart type, and I thought, oh, it's so beautiful that she cries. And so it's the highly developed and the medium developed, and ultimately a person who is a heart type or wants to balance their heart type has to accept that emotions and our emotional lives are a beautiful, important part of us, both the smoothing out of emotions that we have from our past experiences and finding ways to manage our sadness and our anger and our frustration and our need to connect with people, and also the emotions of love and joy and bliss and ecstasy. Those all are more easily available often to heart type people.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
good. I think the development of the heart center is fundamental and key to healing, to
I do.
healthy relationships, and building emotional awareness. And I think there's a lot more emphasis on this these days.
Yes.
But when I first came into Science Mind, we weren't really giving ourselves permission to experience the full spectrum of
Mhm.
our emotions. And I think there's four primary, which is anger, sadness, happiness, and fear.
Yes. Mhm.
And I don't know if you've heard, or I mean, no, you have, this IFS, this internal family systems.
Yes. Yes.
They talk a lot about the parts,
Mhm.
having a closer relationship with all of your parts,
Mhm. Mhm.
because when we don't, when we haven't really addressed these four primary emotions and make space for them, then it seems in an unhealthy place people are in more of a reactive mode,
Exactly.
versus once we've
Mhm.
we've done some depth work here in the heart center. Once we really have tuned in to, are we comfortable with our fear, are we
Mhm.
comfortable with our sadness, with our happiness and our anger, then
Mhm.
we create this emotional intelligence to where we can be with those feelings, accept them all, and be more responsive. Like, it's the knee-jerk reactive, emotion to fear, let's say. But when we've done a bit of depth work here around this emotion, our emotional intelligence, we can then sort of pause a bit, feel that emotion, activate the mind a little bit and the body, and just really sit with that, and then respond in a more elegant and graceful way.
Right.
That's one of the things that I've found in working with the Enneagram myself. And I'm new to the Enneagram. I've only been looking deeply into the Enneagram for 2 years now, but it has really impacted me and my relationships with my family. Oh, I'm looking at the time. We probably need to take a break.
Oh, we sure do. Yes, we do.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back, and we'll continue talking about the heart center and my journey with deepening into that.
Great.
See you in a minute.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge, on the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
And we're back, Michelle and I, having an Enneagram chat. And we are talking about each of the centers of intelligence that the Enneagram points out: the head, the heart, and the body, or the gut center. And we're talking about the heart center and how we can gain some emotional intelligence. And I was sharing that ever since I've learned about the Enneagram and have understood my type, and I lead with type 4, I've been developing this idea of how to connect with my loved ones from a more mature, emotionally balanced, mentally balanced, physically balanced place. And understanding that we all have an opportunity to extend some grace and some compassion to everyone in our life. And I think this is what this center, the heart center, really helps us to develop this emotional intelligence, so we respond more out of it, from a place of wisdom, of compassion, um, when we're in relationships, because we're not all the same.
Mm-mm.
We don't all have clear and constant access to, let's say, our heart center or our body center, our head center. And so we're all of us are in a constant evolutionary phase or circle or spiral of development. And I think learning about our hearts and learning about how to process our emotions, how to be with them, to not overreact when maybe somebody else is in distress, or not push away. If for some of the types, some people are very avoidant of heavy emotions. And I think doing some depth work within the heart center here, we can learn to expand our capacity to have emotional resilience, to be able to sit with people, our loved ones especially, that are going through challenging times, or maybe need some help in finding their voice as far as their heart goes. So how about you? How's your journey with developing in your heart, and what have you learned? Because you are a heart type, and so am I.
Well, I could probably talk for a long time about my own development in the heart type, and I do think that if I were to type new thought, I would say new thought is a head type organization, and that we have struggled in our teaching because people want to do spiritual bypass, and so if something negative or upsetting occurs, there's a misunderstanding that says from our new thought ideas that, well, you just think a happier thought, or you just ignore it, or you just don't think about it. And that's not working for us. It's not working for humanity. But I also would say that in the world of most humans, there's also a desire to avoid the emotional stuff, that it's better to just think things away, or just push it all down. If you have strong emotions, or you have an upsetting childhood or upsetting past, if I just push it down, it will go away. And so, as I've shared my history here, I know that part of my development of myself as a heart type is having someone in my life who urged me and cajoled me and bullied me to push down my emotions for a long time. And so then when they came up, it was almost like a boomerang effect. I was very emotional, and continued to this day to feel joyful to have rediscovered my emotional body. And so it was pretty easy for me to identify myself in those three different types. And that's one way people can actually identify themselves in the Enneagram, is to think about which of these three modalities are you the most comfortable in. So I wasn't for a long time the most comfortable in the heart type, but it was because of my human experience. And then once that went away and I did some healing work and it came forward like a vengeance, it was very clear that I am a heart type, and that I'm happy to be a heart type, and that I am very comfortable with emotionality, mine and other people's, that I see crying and tears for joy or for sadness as a healing thing, and that that I can be with people who are very emotional and just sit with them and not have to fix them or give them advice so they'll stop being so emotional, that sort of thing. That it's a dance that I've become very adept at and comfortable through my development in our New Thought teachings, as well as in the Enneagram, and almost proud to go, I'm a heart type, because for so long I wasn't allowed to be who I really was. And so it's really like reclaiming myself. And as I said before, then what I have to look at is making sure that I'm developing those other types, the head and the body, as voraciously as I am in my heart type, because the head and the heart go together very well when it comes to creating and living, and the head and the heart and the body all have to be together. I think I was telling you before we started our podcast today that I was reading B. Chestnut, and she was pointing to all these systems in the world that are in threes, the trinities in many faith traditions, the trinities that we've been talking about here, and how there's a proponent for humans to have developed only one or two of those areas, and that we attain huge balance in whatever three system we're working with to heal that last one. That people who are often struggling with addiction, or want to lose weight, or want to start a business, or want to heal a relationship, are often only approaching it through that one modality they're the most comfortable in. Maybe all they're doing is thinking about it. They're in their head, or they're having anxiety about it, and they're trying to manage the anxiety with their head, and they haven't developed their heart, or they haven't allowed themselves to develop their body. And that a lot of times in the work to develop those areas where we're a little less strong, we can attain a greater balance, and any of those areas can improve tremendously. So I think I have really focused on the heart, and I have focused, and I have some great head energy, and I've had to really focus on embracing my body and discovering that, like some of the body types, a lot of my inner life does communicate to me through the body. That I have very active stomach. Like anybody who knows me will say, if I start to feel anxiety or fear or upset, I feel it right in my stomach. And so awakening myself to, oh, I'm really feeling that in my stomach. What's going on with I'm having fear right now. I'm anxious about something. I'm into my six where I'm trying to assess risk, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to avoid something, or I'm trying to do, and then it kind of has its connection to my belly, and I can go, oh, okay. And so I'm learning to sort of manage myself from that place of understanding all three of those.
Beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful. Well, let's dive in a little bit to the body center,
Yes, the
and then
body
I'd like to
center.
share some really easy ways, or not easy, but ways that people might activate these centers for themselves.
Great.
So the body center, I think, is the less known about.
Probably. Mhm.
It's I think that I can speak to us being here in the West. Our Western focus seems to be mostly on our feelings and our thoughts, or
Yes.
our intellect,
Body forgetting the body, right?
and forgetting the body,
Mhm.
and the wisdom it carries. And I think the body types, they have a greater way of sensing where they are in space and time. They
Mhm.
have a greater, it's like the evolutionary cycle of animals. And our brain too. You and I were reading an article about the brain, and I think this body center is the first one that probably gets developed when we're in utero. This
Mhm.
body center, our instincts, and I think mankind, or humankind, is supposed to be at the top of the food chain, but I feel like we're there at the top of the food chain, but we've developed our emotional and our mental sensibilities, but not so much this body, this instinct, our primal gut knowing.
Mhm.
And I think that this can be developed. I know for me, I do a lot of movement. I walk every day, and that helps
Mhm.
me get out of my head and my heart, and gets me into a grounded sense of being here, being human, being present. And that's something that wasn't always important to me. And
Right.
so I'm developing that now, learning to tune in to my body's wisdom. You and I both did a module of work in our training with the somatic Enneagram with Mary
Mhm.
Gilbert. And
Mhm.
she's someone that teaches something called the somatic Enneagram, where she's bringing awareness to us of our body's wisdom and how to tune in, because like we talked about earlier, the the subconscious mind, or those thoughts that we don't have clear and constant access to, get lodged down into our body and can become trapped, stale energy, lethargy,
Toxic.
toxic. And so being able to maybe through a meditation or through some kind of guidance from a practitioner, we can learn to tap into some of these buried feelings that are very somatic. They are in our body. And I think by just exploring this, we can build more body awareness. What are
Absolutely.
your thoughts on the body center?
Yeah, I think that that people who are leading in a number that leads from the body center are exactly like you talked about, very instinctual, can't always explain the knowing that they have, would say they have gut awareness. I just know in my gut. They might say that a lot. They might have certain tells in their body when something's not right, like I feel a little tingle on the back of my head or something like that, that they're very attuned to, that they have a really powerful sense of that. And it also is where they can when they're developed, highly developed and aware of it, they can use it really powerfully. If not highly developed and awareness of it, in the less developed, it can show up as just a sense of illness or not feeling well or always struggling with their body in some way. Not everybody who struggles with their physical health is necessarily leading from a body type, but sometimes I think they are, because there's not an awareness or an acceptance or a working with the energy of the body in a healthy way that's trying to say something. And everything that's going on in the body is trying to say something, or they have, as you say, trapped emotions. So I think that can happen a lot. And the body types also, I've been fascinated to see those words we discussed earlier that are kind of below the surface for the body type, which have to do with that energy of that movement forward, that compulsion to move things forward. They can be very, very intense beings who want to move things forward, or intensely out of touch with their body at times too. Like the 9 can be very out of touch with things. So that's another complication that we can get into with the 3 different types someday.
Yeah. And I think that there's the 8, the 9, and the 1 that exist in this triad. And all of them have just below the surface or easy access to anger.
Right.
This frustration that can come. And I know that, and maybe we should save this for another episode, like actually get into each type and how they deal with, this. And so we'll probably do that. So this need to have some sort of control or move, like for the 8, it's control or trying to get justice for things that aren't right, or so it's really focused outside, and the
manipulating matter, right?
Right. Involving the physical world around them, their space, and maybe the people in their space. The 9s are the peacemakers, and they're interested in maintaining harmony and flow. And then the 1s want to make everything just the way they want it. They want to make things right. And so these body-centered types are really focused on their surroundings. And they're connected to that urge to do, to fix, to withdraw, to respond, to react, to whatever it is. And that's not so much like we do. We feel it. We have emotions, so that it's a more complex. I'm thinking it with the evolution of the species, this instinctive part of us, this urge to move, to do, is primary. It's that less developed and more knee-jerk reaction, where when the heart center types come into it, there's emotions involved. So we may be not as quick to react. And with the head types, I can imagine, maybe they're even less, because there's a lot of thinking involved. I don't know. We'll have to explore a little bit more into this and have another discussion.
That would be great.
Yeah. So how we're coming up to the end of the hour. I can't believe it.
I know it's gone by very fast.
So what can we give our viewers maybe a little bit of homework or some tools that they may take out into their lives to develop these three centers of intelligence so that they can make become better at discerning, making choices more elegantly in their lives?
I think we can, and I think you led that effort a minute ago by saying you had some homework. So I think tell us what homework you have, and I'll support you in it.
Okay, so yeah, this kind of is my way of blending what I've learned with science of mind and the Enneagram and doing some. Your mother, our teacher, always says when she's doing a meditation to go in and down. So we close our eyes, take a few centering breaths, and go inside ourselves and down. And I like to go down, deep down into the belly, and first do some grounding, maybe visualize roots and connecting that way. And so this activation is more of a meditation or a self-guided process to tune into the body center, the belly center, and really get a sense of the local body, your local body, and then expand it out to the greater body and feel presence, like your presence, and then the presence of simply being a part of this grand planet and this big life that we're all a part of. And then, maybe do some journaling on what you experience with feeling what it feels like to be in a physical body, to be present, to be a part of this one life. I like to think of that as in relation to the divine. This is omnipresence.
Beautiful.
And then moving up to the heart to explore those feelings, the local heart, the hurt, the anger, the sadness, the fear, the whatever the emotions are that come up. And rather than from a feeling those feelings, more of the observer space, kind of just examine that and quickly before we jump off. And then in the head, there's this sense of what am I thinking? What are the heavy thoughts? But what are the light thoughts, happy thoughts? And then the merging and the blending with the greater mind. And drawing from that place of open-mindedness, I think of the Buddhist teachings, like beginner's mind, open mind. So we're not fixed and narrow. We become broad and expansive in all areas.
Beautiful.
One last thing to add, Michelle, before we jump off?
I would say if any of our listeners want to just allow themselves to feel the one area that they maybe feel the least connected with, and try just doing some journaling with themselves about what am I really feeling, or paying attention if I know that I'm not very heart-centered or I'm afraid of my emotions, just kind of focusing on it. That's all it takes, is some focus and intention to feel into it. Or if I'm not very body-centered, just take a deep breath, like you said, and just feel, what is my body wanting to tell me today? Can be very helpful.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, it has been. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you to New Thought Media Network and the Satya Center for sponsoring this episode. And I will see you next week. Mwah. Peace and blessings. Lots of love to you wherever you are.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.